Massimo Guarini is most notable for directing Grasshopper Manufacture's Shadows of the Damned, an over-the-shoulder shooter in which you play a demon hunter who must enter the underworld to save his girlfriend, kill the big bad, and solve some intricately designed, if convoluted, puzzle scenarios. Video games don't get much more video gamey than Shadows of the Damned. Due to the notoriety it gave him, it came as a surprise to many when Massimo opened up his new studio Ovosonico, a development house with the goal of broadening the definition of video games and providing a greater variety of experiences. Their first completed project, Murasaki Baby, was a side-scrolling puzzle platformer with a bizarrely quirky art style and a bittersweet tone. Last Day of June takes that same form of visual storytelling and transplants it into a three-dimensional environment, but keeps the charming character design of sticking huge heads on small bodies. The game follows Carl as he mourns the loss of his partner June. After a romantic afternoon sitting on a pier by an absurdly picturesque lake, a storm makes them head back to their home when disaster strikes. They are involved in a vehicular accident, killing June and leaving Carl dependent on a wheelchair. Carl, shacked up in their old home with only his deceased lover's old paintings for company, wheels himself around the house looking for something to sate his rumbling stomach. He's clearly not been looking after himself, and you sense that this is the first thing he will have eaten for at least 24 hours, maybe more. You feel for him as he drags his wheelchair around the ghostly, shadowy twilight. Where once the house was cosy and bright, it is now cold and lonely like the blackened wick of a candle snuffed out long ago. The strain of the animation and his grunts as he struggles to regain mobility really bring out our empathy for this crestfallen widow. Searching for a can opener for his meagre meal, he enters June's old studio for what appears to be the first time since her death. As he reaches out to caress her self-portrait, light suddenly emanates from the picture, and the painting is once again filled with colour. Her artwork seems to have taken on a paranormal quality which will allow Carl to see the last 24 hours of her life through the eyes of her friends and neighbours, using their paintings as portals to their memories. Memories that could be altered to change the day's tragic events. The game takes place in a little cul-de-sac in an unnamed Mediterranean country that could have been a setting in a Van Gogh masterpiece. The leaves on the trees and the petals on the flowers look like they have been dabbed onto canvas with acrylics. The studio's depth of field tricks not only ensure that as a player your attention is focused correctly on the objective at hand, but also gives the game a hazy, ethereal feeling, enhancing the game's magical realism with a sense of the surreal. The game is constantly stunning to look at, and every new vista instills new awe into an already breathtaking game. Walking around Carl's idyllic hometown is the most pleasurable part of the last day of June, and gave me the feeling of wonder and discovery you fantasize about having on a dream vacation after reading one too many romantic novels. The characters too were more of an obscure approximation of humanity, just like the location is a mosaic of picture-perfect postcards and screensavers, rather than a real place. The most discerning feature of their character designs is that there is an absence where their eyes should be, and they all talk in a whimsy-heavy version of Simlish. This design is the central point where the game juxtaposes fantasy with reality. They are just human enough to be recognisable, but also strange enough to allow the game's more fantastical elements to never seem out of place. The idea is that we can insert ourselves into the characters, to walk a mile in their shoes as it were, if their features and voices aren't fully developed. This lack of detail allows us to fill them in with our own. The overall effect can sometimes come across as too twee, but in the game's most powerful moments, it just makes their flashes of defeat and despair all the more harrowing to witness. The relationship between Carl and June especially has such a childlike innocence to it. Watching him fall apart over her death is like seeing Peppa Pig's reaction to the inner workings of an abattoir. These designs come courtesy of Jess Cope, a stop-motion filmmaker who worked on Tim Burton's Frankenweenie. She also made a music video with Porcupine Tree Steven Wilson that had characters eerily similar to our protagonists. Her experience with wire puppets is no doubt what gives the characters their palpable moulded feel of delicately sculpted plasticine. Wilson too made a contribution in the form of a haunting and melodic soundtrack that, in just a few short notes, can turn the game on its head, from a chilled out puzzler on a balmy autumn day to a tragic melodrama wallowing in mourning. The game itself plays like an emotional Metroidvania. As Carl finds himself reliving his neighbour's memories, he finds that he cannot immediately access all of the areas of his small village. The wheelchair is an especially nice touch to justify this kind of gatekeeping, as it draws on the inherent tragedy and frustration of debilitation, allowing us to empathise with Carl through the mechanics, a quality that the last day of June excels in. As Carl discovers the memories of each of his neighbours, paths slowly begin to open up. For instance, the first character that he can take control of, a child, can kick a ball that knocks over plant pots, revealing holes in fences or widening narrow pathways, allowing passage. This is the level of the powers that open up your way in the last day of June. No explosives, no double jumps, no wall climbing, you simply open gates, use a variety of keys, and sweep leaves off of pathways. The child character also provides a handy introduction not only to the game's mechanics, but to the context with which we will use them. The goal of the kid is not to make some dramatic rescue of the endangered couple, but to simply find companionship in a place where he is the only child. The other characters follow a similar suit, trying to find some kind of spiritual absolution in everyday tasks such as securing boxes to a moving van or delivering a gift to a friend. Each time you change someone's circumstances, it has unforeseen consequences, ranging from the incidental to the devastating. You then have to navigate a patchwork of different scenarios that all add up to a different ending for June. This involves some repetition and backtracking. Structurally, the game requires you to replay certain scenarios several times, but the game will either abridge them to make them less of a chore, or guide your hand to help you along with the solution. It's a good thing too, because the most cumbersome moments come at times when you are aimlessly wandering around, trying to find the solution to a puzzle, only to realise you've meandered way off track and are now confused as to what to do or even which character to play as in order to progress. It can get monotonous and infuriating at times, but just remember that the further you go from the starting point, the less likely you are to find an answer. One good thing to do while you are pondering the next solution is to collect the memories of each character in the form of collectible cards. They focus on telling relatable stories that pull from some universally shared experiences which, like the powers and objectives, keep this supernatural game about time travelling grounded in a tangible reality. Last Day of June is a joyous, tormenting, cathartic and harrowing journey through the stages of grief. It contemplates the trauma and regret of loss and examines the way in which we mentally try to undo those knots of guilt, only to find that we are better off living with them as best we can, trying to be better people, better friends, and better family along the way.